So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the halfway point of the NFL season. The Dallas Cowboys are 6-3. They're in the playoff hunt, and it does look like they'll be there. It's just a matter of where. Now, we're going to be talking about some things that have come up during this 9-game stretch that I think the Cowboys need to address in the last 8 games in order for me to have faith in them going on a deep playoff run, which, by the way, right now I don't. I do firmly believe that while Dallas will get to the postseason, I think that these problems that they have will rear their ugly head and will result in a first-round exit. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm not praying for that to be right. I definitely don't want to be right in that case. However, we're going to go over a couple things that I've noticed that the Cowboys have done, and they need to get these things fixed, okay? So before we begin, if you can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, that'd be great. So let's get started. So in my notes here, we're going to start with the offense. We'll move our way to the defense, and this does include coaching as well, okay? So just keep that in mind. And this is in no particular order of importance unless I stress that this is the most important. The first is situational play calling, and we're going to use this Packers game as a prime example of what I'm talking about. So there was a moment in the game where the Cowboys, we know that their run game was doing very well against the Packers. They ran for it. They got 5 yards. It was a 3rd and 6. They set up a 4th and 1. They snuck the ball, and they got the first down. Now, what makes it weird is that the Cowboys had a shorter down and distance in overtime where they were literally running the ball at 6 to 12 yards a clip. That is unbelievable. Yet, you elect to pass the ball on 3rd down, forcing yourself to be in a 4th and 4 where really you have to pass the ball more or less, and you get stopped. I don't know what got different from there because for me, if I was in the heat of the moment, it's simply this. I'm running this goddamn ball until they stop it. Sure, you pass the ball with the whole holding call and all this other crap, but you were able to set yourself up into these situations to where you basically went away from that. And that's not what I want to see. I get it that you're feeling a certain way, but you can't be doing that. If you see something working, you roll with that thing until it's not. That doesn't mean that the pass is ineffective. It absolutely is not. However, if you notice something in the game is working well for you, to go away from that, especially with it working as effective as it is, and putting yourself in a better position to win, like, come on, man. Like, the draw play was killing the Packers. You were running to the outside and it was killing them. Like, you were doing your thing. And you got away from that. Now, the other thing, too, is the route concepts on these down and distances. I shouldn't be seeing a thing where on a 4th and 4, why are 3 of my wideouts running go routes? Why are we doing that, man? You can't be doing it. Now, you could argue that, okay, the play was going to be... I don't want to hear that because if you were going to call a pass play and all of them are running go routes and your receivers are having issues with separation, which you can look at the stats. I think the Cowboys are like dead last in separation or something like that with their receivers. But that's a problem. You know, like that is on your play caller. And there are things that Kellen Moore does where I like it, and then there are other things where I don't. And you have to perfect this, okay? The situational play calling has to be better. The next thing, pass catcher indecisiveness / communication issues. This was relevant to the 2 interceptions that happened in the Packers game. And also, going back further, there have been moments where you have receivers running the wrong routes, or they get duped into running wrong routes, or there's just no real chemistry, and then it's like you end in these situations where it's a turnover or it's an incomplete pass when it really doesn't need to be. In fact, let's look at the Packers game. I know it's a recent memory and it's a lot, and ingrained in a lot of our heads, but the big thing is that it's twofold. Your quarterback needs to be able to see, and I understand it's a spot throw. I completely understand that. So you're expecting and trusting your receiver to be there so that they're going to catch it and do something with it. However, you should be able to see, like, okay, I don't see, just throw it out and take the points. You don't want to force something in there, and I understand like there's a trust factor, which is in the second part of it, where your receiver needs to recognize where the safeties are, what's going on, They have to be aware of this, because if you go back and you watch the first interception, while I do believe that Dak Prescott should have thrown that ball away as opposed to just trying to throw it into the end zone, when if you're watching it, you're like, well, why are you throwing that? The other thing too is Schultz needs to know when to cut on the inside, because if you go back and watch the film, if he cuts back onto the inside a little bit earlier, odds are he gets closer and you maybe do a 4th and goal and you maybe sneak it or run it, or he gets a touchdown fighting into the end zone. And then you go to the CeeDee Lamb one. If I don't know why CeeDee's running a go route, because if you look at the middle of the field, it's wide open. If he runs a dig, which, by the way, the Cowboys did that exact same play in overtime, right? They went back to that play, and CeeDee managed to pick up a first down. That is something that bothers me, because if you are not able to do this consistently, it's going to result in turnovers. It's going to result in missed opportunities. We can't afford that, and especially if it's in a do-or-die situation, every play counts. So that's something they need to work on. The third thing, and this is kind of going back into situational play calling, is pass-heavy offense. Now, what I mean by that is that we should not be passing the ball close to 50 times a game if it's not contributing to the success of the team. Now, ironically, and you might be saying, well, Space, like, what are we talking about here? Didn't Dak Prescott manage to get 3 touchdowns, and they were crucial and all this other stuff? Yeah, he made crucial throws and stuff like that. Now, here's the problem. The problem is when you're trying to close games out offensively, and I'm not pinning the Packers game on the offense. Did they make mistakes? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, and I'm going to get to the defense, trust me, but the main thing is that when you are going into these games and you have them won, we shouldn't be passing the ball unless we need to on a 3rd down. You got to know when to do that. And I think that while we've seen Dak throw the ball many times and have had no real issues to where, like, I'm like, hey, listen, if he's passing the ball a whole lot, and it's working, I'm cool with it because we're moving the chains. But at the end of the day, in a game like with the Packers, or a game like the Eagles game where we're kind of trying to pass, like, no, man, like, Kellen, I know you like to pass the ball, but you need to know that just run the ball until it doesn't work, and then we can lean on the pass. That's just my personal opinion, okay? Now, another thing is I would really like for them to help Dak get into a rhythm. And, this is something that's big, right, is that no huddle offense typically likes, when we do the no huddle, it typically works, or it typically helps your quarterback and the offense get into a rhythm early. I think that that's huge, because when you have seen, whether it be in previous games like I've seen, where when they've gone up tempo, it has worked. But really, I think that with coming off the bye week, and I'm not trying to say that this is an excuse, but that does play a factor of the rust. But the Cowboys are going to have to play sharp in these next 2 games. The fourth thing, the pass protection, hasn't been the greatest. Your run game has been very well. I'm not going to sit there and act like it hasn't been, because that's been one part that I like about this offensive line. The problem is that you have Tyler Smith, Connor McGovern, and even Terrence Steele in some instances being bad in pass protection. And this game against the Packers and some of these other games, you've seen it, and it's like, dude, like, what the hell are we doing? And it doesn't give us time to develop these plays. And that's something that I have to attribute to Kellen Moore, and kind of going back to the whole situational stuff, is that if you see that a team's, like with the Lions game, they're biting to stop the run, use play action a lot more, which, that's something that bothers me. And again, I think that these are things that you can definitely correct. I think that this is more coaching and schematic things that you can work on. And you got 8 games to figure it out, and I think that this is something you could figure out. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the number one thing, the run defense is trash on the edges. I think that when you look at the film of how the Cowboys have been doing defensively against the run, initially, before you got Jonathan Hankins, and again, in the last 2 games, I think they did better in the interior. Now, granted, there were a couple plays where I'm like, why the hell is Gallimore or, Osa, like, it looks like they're just not trying. That's a problem. Like, it feels like you're not selling to stop the run. But another thing is that your edges aren't good against the run besides D-Law. D-Law really, and he didn't set the edge well in this game against the Packers, and, there's been moments where he hasn't, but really, you have only two guys that have been able to do it. Micah and D-Law. And on top of that, you don't have your corners coming in to stop the run either. So really, you don't have a lot of converging bodies. So that's why you're seeing these chunk plays, because that second level isn't committing to stopping the run. Are they afraid to tackle? Like, what the hell's going on, Dan? Like, come on, Dan Quinn. We got to do better there. I do believe, though, that this is going to be something where you need to tell your guys, listen, you need to be able to do these things better, because I think this is more of a personnel thing, and I've said this numerous times throughout the season, and I said this in the offseason, that going cheap isn't going to help you in the long run, because I've seen, I leave notes for every single year and what the Cowboys have done, and in the past 3 years, the run defense has just been so porous because you haven't addressed the up front guys, your defensive tackles, and then you go to the edges, and that's been your problem. I think that when you look at the needs, the Cowboys are going to need another linebacker or two, and I just don't know what's going on there. I think that you need to play guys, and that's really the problem, is when you have young guys. Like, I didn't see Damone Clark out there, which I think I would have loved to see. Like, you need guys with speed to get to these, to take these angles to get this job done, and they aren't doing that. They aren't. So the run defense is bad, and that's going to be sucky come playoff time. And this is where I think the Cowboys can be a first-round exit, is that if they're unable to stop the run, guys, especially in games where, like the Packers game again, or, you look at every single game, the Detroit game, they're able to run the ball on you without their main guy, DeAndre Swift. You look at the Bears game where they're running almost 200-something odd yards on you. You look at, that's bad, man. Like, we shouldn't be in these situations, because you know what? The Packers showed that if you just commit to the run, you're going to get chunk plays and you're going to get back into a game even when you're down double-digit scores, which typically, that's a problem. It feels like the team is more concerned about the pass rush than the run stopping. And if it were up to me, and I've said this every goddamn time because it's rung true, if you force the team to pass, then you got yourself a good chance of getting there. But even in this game where you could have won, the defense lost it for you. You have a 14-point lead. You don't give up a 4th and 6 touchdown when that's the game for you. Like, you don't do that type of shit. No. I understand that Anthony Brown's hurt. I get it, Jay Lewis hurt. But that's the problem, is when you go cheap, this is what happens. On top of that, I want to see, and this is a big thing, I need to see Trevon Diggs travel more. What should have happened was that after Christian Watson scored the touchdown, considering that none of the other receivers are doing, no, that's it. You got to put Diggs there. You got to be able to do that, and I think that that's been a big problem. Is that if he's on Allen Lazard, like, there are plays where I'm like, why is he covering this tight end or this no-name guy that hasn't done anything? And it's not even Allen Lazard. So we need to see the ability for Dan Quinn to recognize these things, and I'm gonna get into Dan Quinn in a moment. You got to be able to recognize these things, because if you are in a game where you have one guy going off and you don't move somebody over to that side like a Trevon Diggs that can take care of it, all you're going to do is put yourself in a worse situation. I think that if Diggs was on, again, going back to the situational stuff and going to Dan Quinn himself, he needs to be able to adapt. The problem is that it looks like that historically, Dan Quinn's defenses have not been well against the run after the first year, and that is something that worries me as we move forward, because it feels like Dan Quinn is not going with hot hands, or maybe there's a certain rotation. It doesn't matter, man. Like, if Sam Williams is doing good, you got to play him. I get it that from the up top, they want the guys with the money to get all the snaps and stuff like that, but I don't care, man. You need to be able to adapt to these situations, and, that kind of pisses me off, because there's a lot of people that are not giving the defense proper criticism on that, but they're willing to give the offense as much shit as possible. Now, that's no excuse for the offense doing what they're doing. But again, like, I don't want to see us in a big time situation where it's literally games on the line and you give up a touchdown that kind of sucks the air out of your team. Like, you can't be doing that. And then finally closing out games better. There are 2 times. Now, there's going to be someone that says this. Space Cowboy, the Dallas Cowboys defense got tripped up because the offense put them in those situations. I hear you. Here's my thing, though, is that elite defenses make stops when they need to make stops. The Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to give you an example of this. In the 2 losses we've had, okay, yes, the Cowboys offense gave up in the Philly game 3 turnovers for 13 points and then 2 turnovers for 14 points in the Packers game. I get it. You gave up those points. However, situationally, your offense came alive, got you back into the game. The Philly game, 17-20. Momentum was on your side. If you make one stop, odds are the Cowboys drive down, and they might win. Like, I'm not saying that they would, but knowing how the game was going, it felt like if the Cowboys can muster one more drive, they probably win the game. You blow that, and you gave up a touchdown, making it 27-17. You go to the Packers game. You're up 14 points. You literally have to stop Green Bay one time, even after giving up the touchdown. One time. And you did. You forced the game to go into overtime, and then you have a chance to stop them in overtime. And I don't want to hear shit. You cannot win games defensively if you're doing this. And you guys need to play better on that side of the ball. I get it. The quarterback's back, and Dak Prescott, you're scoring a bunch of points. 24, 49, 28 here. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. Do better. Close out these games. This is inexcusable. This is the first time in Cowboys history where we were up 14 points in the fourth quarter and we blew a game. 195-0. Now 195-1 because of that. So I know I've been long-winded, and I know this was a longer video, but I wanted to get this out because, guys, you have 8 more games to fix this. If you do not fix this, I'm afraid the Dallas Cowboys are going to be a first-round exit. You look at the playoff picture. You have really 3 realistic matchups. You're looking at Tampa Bay, you're looking at Seattle, and the 49ers. Those 3 teams have been able to run the ball effectively. And also, you need to kind of figure, okay, can your defense stop those runs, but also can your offense put up enough points to negate that? And that's the problem. You would think in the game that went like the Packers, we can negate what was going on with the run game because we put up 28 points and we were up 14 points, you name it. But again, when you spot a team 14 points, that's one thing. But if you overcome that and your defense lays an egg, that's another problem. Okay? So those are my points. I think that if the Cowboys can fix those things, which defensively it's going to be a little bit more harder because they don't have the personnel, injury, all that other stuff. You got to get this thing right. I think that these next 2 games upcoming are crucial. You can't afford to start slipping because while I do think that the playoff seeding, as you see, will probably stick, Dallas needs to win these next 2 games because anything can happen. The last thing you want to do is you go on a slide and the Packers beat you out for that final playoff spot because your dumbass decided to do that shit. See what I mean? But luckily, right now, you're, I believe, 2 games now above the Packers because of your record. Now, again, that's no guarantee that the Packers will go on a run. If they do, holy shit, because I'm going to be upset because the Cowboys had them dead to right, and you fucked it up. So again, to end this long-form video, I want to make it emphatically clear. This is the things that the Cowboys have to fix. Their situational play calling. They need to fix the pass catcher They need to fix the pass catcher indecisiveness and communication issues. They need to be able to learn, and again, this kind of goes into situational football, being able to lean on the run more than the pass, and then the pass protection needs to be better. And I think it will get better, assuming that Tyron Smith comes back. But again, I'm not a fan of mixing around the offensive line. Defensively, the run defense is trash. You need to fix that with what you got. Tell guys to tackle better. I know, like, you got to go over this. Stop telling them to be wusses, or just, make them stop being wusses and tackle. Plain and simple. We need more help at linebacker, and I think that involves you're going to have to play some of these young guys for better speed, and Micah play more a little bit in the linebacking role. And then the cornerbacks, you need Diggs to follow the top receiver, whoever's performing well, or if you're in a situation where there's, like a Jefferson that we're going up against. Dan Quinn needs to be able to adapt better to the situations and close out games. If we can't get this done, we will not be doing anything special in January, and we will have another first-round exit. Right now, guys, if I had a gun to my head, I would say that the Cowboys lose in their wild card matchup. I'm being dead-ass serious. That doesn't mean that they don't have a chance, because realistically, on paper, you look at what the Cowboys can do, and I think that they can win. I definitely do. I think that they're going to do some Cowboy shit, win the game versus Minnesota to kind of reinvigorate us, and be like, oh, we're 7-3. We just beat the red-hot Vikings after. I'm telling you, man, like, this is something you got to work on. You still need to prove it. I don't give a shit if you're 6-3 when I thought you were going to be 5-4 at this juncture. I did, however, I think I did pick the Cowboys to win against the Vikings. So then if they lose, then they'd be at 6-4, which I thought they would be at this point in the year. But again, the Dallas Cowboys need to get this stuff done. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much, and have a good one. Goodbye.